Welcome back to another episode of the A Team at New Beginnings Farmstead. We have everyone here.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Be nice.
Be nice.
So you all know that
Are we ever taking this mobile? Are we going to do anything like actual
Oh
farming?
yeah, like
stuff?
live from.
Yeah, yes. Log splitting, firewood cutting, tree felling. What are we
Four-wheeler
doing?
riding.
Around here? There's no place to ride a four-wheeler around here.
You have 130 something acres.
There's really 20 acres of it's solar.
Yeah, it's all right.
Plus the neighbors think it's noisy. And
That neighbor moved.
you just want to bring your new side-by-side out.
I do.
You can do that without
do.
us recording.
It's too
You're
big to
welcome
ride
to do
around
that.
here.
I don't
It's
think
not too
that's
big.
true.
Well,
We have some pretty wide trails.
it is bigger than your car.
No, it is not.
Yeah, it is.
Does it burn fuel?
Fossil fuels, yes.
The renewable kind that
Yes.
you were talking about the last time.
Yes.
Got it.
All right, Elisa, what's the topic?
So we had a little incident at work. I shouldn't say incident. It's not really what happened. So someone had come into the office that had come in a few times, and a coworker said to me, every time he comes in, I get this bad feeling. I don't know why. I don't know this person. I don't know why, but it makes me uncomfortable. And I was telling him about this book that I actually then gave to him. It's called The Gift of Fear. And I know you have heard about it because I am all about this book.
I don't have to read any books. You read them and you tell me and everyone else at the dinner table exactly what the books are.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It is perfect. It's like a Reader's Digest version.
Cliff's
Right.
Notes.
Over food.
So
I've never heard of it.
okay. So
Yeah, I haven't either.
the author's name is Gavin de Becker. So I was just confirming before
Okay.
I said his name. The book was written, I think, in 1997. So Gavin de Becker has spent his entire adult life working for government agencies one way or another, and he has interviewed both serial killers and victims of violent crime.
Okay.
And the book is a series of true stories from these interviews. And the premise behind the book is that we all have this natural gift of fear in us, and we suppress it. And
That's because the gift of love is shining above it.
Right, but is fear a gift?
fear is a gift. It's a natural instinct. Animals have the gift of fear.
Right. Okay.
And again, it was written in the late 90s. And
Can't believe they just discounted the whole gift of love thing.
yes,
Yeah. But
women
it's just-
in particular.
it's a whole thing.
Why women? What's it got to
So,
women?
so because I grew up in an era of children should be seen and not heard, and young girls were particularly told, be polite, be nice, be polite. And by suppressing that, enforcing that to be polite and nice over everything else, you are putting your children at danger.
And this is what the book's about.
This is what the book is
So
about.
we should have said spoiler alert, right? Is that?
It's an amazing book, and it's so amazing. And the concept of this is of being aware of when you get a feeling that there is something wrong. I'm in something around me. I'm in a bad place. I'm with somebody who I feel could be a threat. Do not suppress that feeling. And I think we've all done that. And it's, again, especially young girls, maybe not necessarily now, because girls are much more empowered now than they used to be. But it is incredibly important that you don't suppress that. If you feel like suddenly somebody has entered the room and a wave comes over you that I'm in danger, you're in danger. So you need to listen to that natural instinct that is telling you something is wrong.
It's a gut feeling?
It is a gut feeling. And you don't believe it.
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
No, I'm saying I've read a lot about the mind-gut connection. And people use the, gut feeling. I've got butterflies in my, gut. All these different things that connect your brain with your belly. And that your body feels things that your brain is sensing.
Yes. And that you need to listen to that. And in the book, it's story after story after story of victims who said, I was going up the stairs and this person was talking to me and I knew I shouldn't turn around and talk to them, but I did it. because I was in my apartment building. I didn't want to be rude. Clearly, it was a neighbor. Well, it wasn't a neighbor, and that person was viciously attacked. Things like that. And it specifically talks about when that victim, when they knew they're in trouble. Because with every person in this book, they said there was a moment before I was struck or strangled or whatever happened. There was a moment where I knew I was in trouble. And I just discounted all the red flags.
Has this ever happened to you?
It has.
Me too.
Okay, do tell.
Okay, so it's not related to fear or being attacked, but I have a family that has 3 people in it, and for a long time, for 18 years, I had 2 cats, Jack and Bubba. And Jack and Bubba are twins, pure white, came from the same family, been with us our whole lives. I've never had this feeling ever in my whole life, but one morning I woke up and I turned over to my husband and I said, I think Bubba died. And we looked all over the house and we found him downstairs in a crate. Within 2 minutes of death, we got there, we said our goodbyes to him, and he passed away.
Wow.
I've never had that feeling in my entire life, ever. It was like a sixth sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy when
And
it
I
happens.
and I acknowledged and I recognized that that happened, and there were no signs that would have led towards that happening. Nothing, no sounds,
meowing,
no meowing, no behavior, no like anything. I knew it. I woke up, I said, I think Bubba died. Crazy.
Yeah. So I have had 2 incidents, and I'll tell you both. But the one incident was when I have 4 biological children, and when my second born was 9 months old, he started out of nowhere. He had developed epilepsy, and he was having severe seizures, enough so that he would have more than 10 in a day. And that's a horrific experience. And we needed to get him to, of course, he was hospitalized, but we had to get him to a pediatric neurologist as quickly as possible because they need to stop the seizures because it causes brain damage. So we were fortunate enough to find one. This is going back more than 20 years. And at the time, there were only 600 pediatric neurologists in the country. And one happened to be in Albany. And I had run into my neurologist in the grocery store, and he happened to say, hey, how are you? And I told him what was going on. And he, in the store, made a phone call and got us into an appointment the next day. So pack up my daughter, who's 5 at the time, and we're driving up there because my child's life depends on this. We need him to be on the correct medicine. We need to get him healed. So we go in, and the doctor comes in. My ex-husband now was holding the baby, and the doctor said hello to us, and he looked at my daughter. He bent down and he said, and what is your name? And she screamed, don't let him touch our baby. And she ran from the room, through the office, down the stairs, and into the parking lot. And I'm chasing her out, and she is hysterical, absolutely hysterical. And I cannot calm her down. The baby was back in there with my husband at the time, and I'm saying to her, he is going to help our baby. And she kept saying, he's a bad man. Don't let him near the baby. Don't let him near the baby. I basically shut her down because I need this doctor to help my child. And 5 years later, he did put us on medication, lots of years of medication, years of testing. We're in the process of weaning my son off of the medication to see if the seizures will come back. And we had gotten a phone call. It was my nephew in Albany, who's a doctor, and he said, what is your son's doctor's name? And we said the name, and I will say the name. It was Dr. Philip Ryback. We told him who it was. He said, turn on the news now. And Dr. Philip Ryback was being removed from his building in handcuffs for molesting his male patients.
Wow.
She knew it.
Wow.
She knew it, and I didn't listen.
Hmm.
And then, of course, all the phone calls from the lawyers, and do we think he was ever alone with the doctor? And he was not. He was never alone, even during hours of testing and They test in dark rooms for different brain activity. We never left him for 1 second with any of the doctors by himself. But Dr. Rybeck is serving a very long sentence for what he did to 7 little boys who were my son's age.
Ew.
And that he did for many, many years. But she knew it. And they say children in particular have that sense.
Wow.
And I shut her down.
So why do you think the children have it over adults?
Because I think they haven't been told to suppress it. It's
Haven't been
learned.
told to suppress it, or we've experienced it and become numb to it?
Both. I think we have a society where we don't listen when a child says, I have a feeling he's a bad person. Why would she say this? He's a bad man. This is a doctor that I need. There's only 600 of them.
Right.
Don't let him touch our baby. He's going to hurt our baby. And she was hysterical. And I'm like, I need him. We need him. He's going to help the baby.
Yikes.
And that is the gift of fear. And that's what this book is about. It's that when you feel internally, this is a bad situation, even if it's a situation where you think you need help from this person, you better listen to your inner feeling, because that's a gift. That's nature telling you that. Animals have that. Animals know when there's something is off, and they don't suppress it. If they suppress it, they die.
Has this ever happened to you guys?
I feel like if I had a situation like that,
suppressing
that I
it?
could
Are you
recall, that it would stick out in my mind. I mean, of course, there's certain situations where you read the room, read your environment, or know your situation is not the greatest. And I don't know if it's fear or just experience, or I'm not sure.
Right, like people
Nothing
who like
particular.
don't get on an airplane and then the airplane crashes. And they're
Right.
Like, I was supposed to be on that airplane, but something
Well,
just didn't
Right.
feel right.
So we did have an experience. Our oldest son is a police officer, and I am constantly, because I read this book a while ago, and this author was on Oprah many, many years ago. And so I have been telling our kids in particular,
Telling the kids, you bought
constantly,
the copy.
I got everybody.
Everyone
this
is
book.
indoctrinated in this, and listen to your sixth sense, and make sure you always pay attention and don't discount it. And so
Tell us what happened.
So he's a police officer, and at one point he's assigned to a late night shift. He gets a call as he rolls up. It's kind of in the backwoods somewhere. As he's pulling up, he's walking up to it, and there was a call on a check of the welfare. And as he's walking up, he says to himself, "Huh." Now again, he's telling the story after, and he's thinking, and he
Something's not
says
right.
to himself, "Gift of fear."
Yeah, he said, I said to myself,
now, what
here it is.
surprises us is that he actually listened.
Listen to anything that I have said to him in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But I'll
Yeah.
tell you what,
Surprising when he
yes,
said it. Yeah.
if you're going to listen to one thing, that was the right thing to listen
That's
to.
it. So he said, instead of going, again, part of it's tactics, right? What they learned in the academy and everything else. But
Absolutely.
part of it was, and he went ahead and approached from a different direction and just had the feeling, don't go up to the door. And as he came up away from the main entrance, he heard someone inside said, "I'm going to shoot you, get off my property." And at that point, he recoiled back to his car and called for assistance. And it all worked out at the end. Thankfully, it was a person who was under some stress and crisis. But the fact is, he was quick to tell us the story. And again,
He
the most
said there
shocking
was,
part
right, that
of
he
that
listened.
to us was when he said, "And then I remember Elisa saying about the book, Gift of Fear, and don't suppress it, and listen." And we're like, "Wow, you actually
Yeah, you
listened."
listened. You listened. That was very exciting for me. But he had that moment where he paused because something inside of him said, uh-oh. And that's all it takes, is that little pause where you're like, what is that?
Yeah, and again, you mentioned it about reading the room, right? And it's certainly
Right.
at a level of-
Situational awareness.
right.
And
With law enforcement, you're kind of training yourself to be aware of what's going on. And you know, I'm telling the story that you told me from your mom, who's no longer with us, but you know, she went to the bank, and upon getting to the bank, she's filling a deposit slip or a checking slip, whatever it might be. And at one point, she sees a couple of people there, and they were dressed somewhat different, you know. And she's like, she goes, "Oh my God, why am I thinking like this? They just don't have the same money we do. I'm an awful person."
She
I'm an
s-
awful-
she said
you know,
she was having
she
this
convinced
inner
herself,
yes.
"What am I doing? I'm judging
Why would
people by
why
their
would I
looks.
think something's wrong just because of how they look?
How they look."
What's wrong with me? She said she's having this inner conflict in her mind
Yep.
as the gun went on her shoulder.
She said, "I could have put the pen down and
Right.
walked down
And
the
walked
bank,
out. She would have had enough time, but she stood there
and
having
she
this
got in
inner
line,
argument.
knowing doesn't feel right."
Something's wrong.
And then you said she felt the shotgun
The
hit her,
shotgun hit her on the
rest on
shoulder.
her shoulder, and the guy racked around in it and said, "This is a bank robbery. Everybody get on the ground."
And they were
They got
they were
locked in the
held. They were
vault,
locked in the
and-
vault for 6 hours.
And
Wow.
then
Wow.
you were home
This
with
was
your
in
dad,
Kingston.
and your dad had no idea, no cell phones,
Right.
and was like, "Jesus."
Well, my father, he came home from lunch. I was homesick that day from school. I was in kindergarten or first grade, very young, and my mom had his lunch ready for him because he worked only a mile away, and said, "I'm going to run to the bank. I have to make this deposit, and I'll be right back." And she never came back. And my father's like, now what? I can't leave because I'm there. All right, I'm 5 years old, and he was mad. He's like, where did she go? Did she go grocery shopping? Like, what is happening? And then we're waiting all day, and my brother come home from school and still nothing, and then the police came.
Wow.
So, and the same thing. She said there was that moment where she described it as a wave came over her body. And when she looked at this group of individuals, and she thought, what is wrong with me? Why would I think that? What is that? Why? Because I don't like the way they look. They look different than, they're dressed differently. Like she said there was something about them.
Well, it's hard to tell what you would do in the circumstance,
right.
right? Like maybe it happens to us a lot.
It probably does.
Probably does.
Yeah. I had another situation when I was quite young. A single mother and her daughter had moved in across the street from us, and my mother and she became good friends quickly. And her daughter was about 2 years older than me, and perfect to have a new friend that lived across the street, and became fast friends. And my parents got to know her well, and her boyfriend at the time, and I spent a lot of time with her. My mother used to babysit her after school, but we spent a lot of time outside of that together as well. And I was never comfortable when the boyfriend was at the house. And there was no reason for it. He never did anything to me. He never touched me. He never said anything inappropriate. But there was something about it. And I was about 8 years old, and when I was first going there alone. And to the point where I would not, if I went there and I was planning to sleep over, which I did a lot, and suddenly her mother wasn't home, I would call one of my parents and have them come and get me. Now, it wasn't across the street, so their backyard was across the street. They were on the next street down. But if it was dark out, I would say, "I'm coming," she'd meet me halfway. And there were several times when my parents would say, what is wrong with you? What's going on? Like, why? What's going on? What happened? And I said, nothing happened. And there were times when I refused to be there when he was there. And looking back now as an adult, I know that I didn't have the language skill to say to my mother at 8, 9, 10 years old, he's looking at me sexually, because that's what it was. He was looking at me in a way that made me uncomfortable, but I couldn't describe it at that age. And there were times when my mother said, don't, we're friends with them, because they would socialize with them. And my mother would say, don't embarrass me. What is if there's nothing going on, what is the problem? Fast forward a couple of years, and I was in middle school. He owned a bar in Kingston, and on my way walking home from middle school, I would see him. He would always like be standing in the doorway or whatever, and I'd say hello to him and kept going. On this one day, he got in his car and followed me and stopped about 5 times and said, "I'm going home. Get in the car. I'll drive you home." And I did not get in the car. I wouldn't have gotten in the car anyway. That was one thing, of course, my parents drilled into my head. But he, 5 times in about a mile, get in the car. Come on, I'm going home. What's wrong with you? Get in the car. And I never got in the car. It was a Friday night, and I will never forget this. Went home. I never said anything to my parents because they were kind of tired of me complaining about this guy. Saturday morning, I wake up and I go into the kitchen, and my parents were sitting at the kitchen table, and they said, "You are not going to believe this, but so-and-so was arrested. He hired a hitman to kill the girlfriend, who they had actually gotten married at that point." And there was a shooting in Kingston at a restaurant called the Promised Land on Foxhole Avenue. And it was a hitman who'd gone into a crowded restaurant and killed someone. And when they arrested him, he came forward with the information that he had a contract to kill her the next night. And that was the night before. That was the day before, where he was following me in the car. So
Gift of fear.
it is the gift of fear. You can't suppress that.
And
It
yet,
happens. What?
Do you think you do that now?
I try to. I think it's not
'Cause
easy to recognize
It
it.
could be deadly if you do, right? That's what you're trying to get across.
Yeah.
You're saying if you say,
Well, I think it's important if it's like one person in particular, you want to make sure I think you need to protect yourself. Yeah. Do I do it as much as I probably should? Probably not.
because you're being polite.
There are times where you have to be polite, right?
Right. And there's a lot of odd situations that we all face on the day to day that, I mean, I understand that feeling, but there are a lot of situations that are cause for a pause in your situation to go, oh, hold on a minute. Let me take a step back and look at this, because this could go south in a hurry. Something goes seriously wrong here. But is it situational? Is it based on your experience? Is it based on your instinct? Is it? I mean, there's a lot of factors that
There
play
are a
into
lot
that.
of factors, 100%. Yeah, clearly, me being, trained to some capacity is very different on how I'm going to see a situation, because I've been exposed to many of those.
Right.
So, but the fact is, you may never have been, and the fact is, even talking about it with the kids, some of them are a little bit more aware of the situation awareness and the tactical response that they have to make, and positioning, and don't back yourself into a corner, and make sure you have access to whatever. And I think a lot of that is, part of it's the training, part of it's the upbringing, part of it's there's people that panic when they lose electric. It's just that,
Right. Well,
they panic. Oh my gosh, now what are we going to do? And we're like, oh, okay, let's break out the candles, and it's just something. But if you've never been exposed to it or trained to that, and we kind of call it the Rolodex, right? If you got to fill out the card as it's happening, it's too late. You got to have a system in place that you can turn to and say, if this happens, this is my response.
Right.
And or some fashion of it. But if you're developing a plan of response and you haven't thought it through, the what if and I knows, well, yeah, it's tough, but and something like that, clearly the point of all this is don't suppress it.
Right.
Because it's about survival.
Yeah. And it is a natural instinct that animals
So
have and we suppress. As a
the old
society,
expression,
we suppress
the
it.
hair on the back of my neck. Did he say that, or does he reference that in the book?
I don't remember if
Oh,
that
okay.
exact reference
Because
is
that's
made.
what
That's what
when
it
the
is.
hair on the back
Yeah.
of your neck goes
Right.
up, something's going on, right? Something to be aware of, right? So
Right. If you're in an elevator by yourself and someone gets on the elevator and suddenly you feel like, uh-oh, you need to get off the elevator.
I don't want to be on the elevator with anybody ever.
I get off the elevator now after that book. Someone gets on there, I step off.
Wise guy.
What if you're the one getting into the
Yeah,
elevator
yeah.
with
everybody
one other person?
runs. He gets in the elevator and everybody
Right.
flees.
Yeah, right.
Well, we joke about this to some degree, we can now. But when our youngest was first time we met my father was my father was coming up the stairs, and he was
No, Turner was coming upstairs. Your father was sitting at the table.
no. My
Yes.
father was coming up the stairs. Turner had just come in the house, just walk in the house. My father opened the basement door. My father was 2 steps down, so he was about eye level with Turner.
Who
And
was
out
5.
of the dark basement, the door opens, and there's a man with the lighting that looked somewhat like the devil. He had the mustache curl up, the beard. He was very dark tan Italian, and at one point Turner just looked and saw the devil himself and ran out of the house screaming.
He screamed and ran from the house and never went back.
Never.
Never.
Fear. Now, the truth is, many people, many of my family members, my age, my cousins and whatnot, had a very healthy fear of my father. He was a very scary man, loud and strong, and would never harm a fly, except the sun, but when I deserved it. But he was a scary man. Yeah, I feared my father for many, many years, and I meant feared my father. Like when he said it was going to get done, it had to get done. That was just the way it was. There was no answer failure. That's just the way it was. But before I have some PTSD set in again from those experiences, we should probably wrap this
Yeah.
up.
Well, I think that it is a very valuable book, and I would suggest that you read it, especially for your children. Your children should be aware of that feeling. They should grow up. You should be listening to what they say. When they
Recommend as a
say,
stocking stuffer?
for adults, yes, it's not a book for children to read because it's frightening. The stories inside are true. It's all accurate statements. They give names and events when they happen, where they happen, and but it is something to be aware of. I think we need to be aware of our environment. It's important.
All right.
All right, I'll let you read my book when I get it back.
I would love to.
Okay. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of the A Team at New Beginnings Farmstead. I hope you like and subscribe.
See you soon.